Hey everyone, I hope you're enjoying your Go Battle weekend. And I don't know about you guys, but I'm getting pretty sick and tired of seeing Steelix in every single Ultra League and Great League team. Okay, well not Great League, but you guys get what I mean. So in today's video, I am going to be running a very Anti-Steelix team. I will warn you, this team is extremely weak to some Fliers. It is going to be weak to Pelipper. If you see a Pelipper, you should probably top left, honestly. No. You could probably play around it, maybe like team effort it. Mandibuzz is going to be a big problem for this team because our safe swap Gliscor does not deal with Mandibuzz well, especially since it has Night Slash and Earthquake, and opposing Charizards are going to be a little bit tricky as well. So the team has its weaknesses, but it is very strong and I really enjoyed running it. You're going to have Virizion on the lead, which is going to take care of all those water types that the backline is weak to. Gliscor is going to be our safe swap, which is going to do a really good job of drawing out any water types, so Swampert, Tapu Fini, and once those are out of the way, Charizard should be able to sweep. The two Pokemon in the back also have coverage for Giratina, which our lead is very weak to. This entire team is very anti-steel, so steel types are not going to be a problem. But now that you know how the team works, let's get into the battles. Up first, we have a very good lead. We have Gradient into Virizion. Of course, we're going to stay in and just go for these Sacred Swords, and my opponent is going to be going for Body Slam because Body Slam is going to be doing neutral to Virizion, whereas Crunch is going to be resisted. So my opponent is staying in. I did think he might try to catch here, so I am trying to be careful. I go ahead and throw the second Sacred Sword in the middle of his Mudshot so that he doesn't catch. It lands, my opponent doesn't shield, and because I haven't drawn out a water type yet, I do swap out of Virizion when my opponent brings in Giratina into my Gliscor. My opponent is staying in, which must mean he is really weak in the back to Gliscor, so this could be good news for our Charizard. If he is weak to Fliers in the back, then Charizard is going to be able to sweep. Now, I think I am going to go ahead and save both shields for Charizard. Unfortunately, my opponent is able to catch the next Night Slash on their Scrafty. I am able to reach an Earthquake, however, and I believe this grabs their first shield. My switch timer is up, so I'm going to go ahead and bring back in Virizion and go for these Sacred Swords. I had so much energy stored up on Virizion because I farmed up as much as I could before swapping out. The first Sacred Sword takes his second shield, and I'm not going to have to shield anything from this Crafty. I'm actually going to be able to live 2 power-up punches and reach another Sacred Sword, putting this Crafty in the red, and then I can come in with Charizard and farm down completely. I saved both shields for my Charizard because I'm going to be able to shield this powered-up Foul Play, and then the Giratina is going to come in, and I'm going to throw 2 Dragon Claws to take it out. My opponent surrenders, and we take that win. GG's to my opponent, and moving on to the next match where we see a very terrible lead of Shadow Dragonite into our fighting type. I immediately swap into Gliscor, and fun fact, 2 Night Slashes with the wing attack damage are going to be enough to take out this Dragonite. My opponent lets the first move go, which makes sense in case the second one is boosted. And I am going to go ahead and shield the first Dragon Claw. I will shield the second Dragon Claw as well. I'm just going to have to watch out for the catch on the second one. So my opponent is going to throw the second Dragon Claw here. I shield, and my opponent attempts to catch on Registeel. Lucky for us, we don't throw it. We save our energy, and we go for an Earthquake on Registeel. Now, what I want to do is I want to catch the Zap Cannon and bank a Night Slash on my Gliscor in case I need it for the Shadow Dragonite later. I'm not going to let my opponent reach another move. Instead, I'm going to throw the Sacred Sword before he reaches a Focus Blast, and this should be enough to take him out. Now, my opponent brings in Toxicroak instead of bringing in Dragonite, which makes sense because Dragonite is actually in range of Sacred Sword right now. So now I'm just doing as much chip damage as I can to this Toxicroak. Even though all of Virizion's moves are resisted, Toxicroak is very fragile and is going to be taking a lot of damage from the moves either way. My opponent brings back in Dragonite, and I throw a Leaf Blade, and it's enough to KO. Now with the Dragonite out of the way, I am going to be able to align my Charizard to the Toxicroak, and he is going to need 2 Sludge Bombs to take us out. I also have a move stored on Gliscor, and my opponent realizes this, so he lets the Dragon Claw go, and we take that win. Moving on to the next match, we see a very bad lead of Deoxys into our fighting type. We are going to immediately swap into Gliscor, and my opponent is going to throw a Psycho Boost. I am going to no-shield it, just because I am worried that my opponent is going to bring something in that is going to hard counter me. but they don't. They bring in Obstagoon. I go for Earthquake and it takes his first shield. Now my opponent throws at 6, which means he must be running Obstruct, and it makes sense why he shielded the first move because the next move is going to be doing less damage to him. Going for a second Earthquake, and it does almost half of whatever health he's left at. My opponent is, however, going to have to throw 2 more Obstructs in order to take me out because I almost reached that Earthquake, and that might have been enough to take him out. Now I'm going to bring in Virizion, and I'm going to farm as much as I can. I'm going to farm him down completely, and I'm okay with taking whatever moves this Obstagoon is going to throw at us because both Night Slash and Obstruct are going to be resisted. Now my opponent is going to bring back in Deoxys, and I'm going to go ahead and chip with a Leaf Blade because my Charizard needs a little bit of help because it's not Shadow, and 1 Blast Burn is not going to be enough to take out Deoxys, unfortunately. I'm going to go ahead and shield whatever this Deoxys is going to throw at us. If it's a Rock Slide or Thunderbolt, that could be very bad for us. It's a Psycho Boost, and then my opponent swaps into Steelix, and I'm going to CMP tie on the Breaking Swipe and throw the Blast Burn. I expected him to CMP tie because my opponent is always going to try to debuff me as soon as possible. Now that takes his last shield, and I'm going to go ahead and do the same on the second Blast Burn. Unfortunately, my opponent realized that I was trying to CMP tie him, and he went ahead and threw that extra Dragon Tail. But that's okay because our Virizion is loaded up with energy, so I'm just going to bring it back in, and I expected him to swap back into Deoxys, so I went ahead and threw that Leaf Blade, and my opponent brings back in Steelix, and I can actually survive this Breaking Swipe. Just for fun, just for giggles, I'm not going to shield it. And we take that win. On to the next match, I see a very nice lead of Poliwrath into Virizion, and what I'm going to do here is I'm going to do something very stupid. I'm going to go ahead and throw an alignment and let my opponent catch the Leaf Blade on their Drapion. So, really great plays from me. Learn what not to do from me, guys. Unfortunately, this Drapion is going to be running Aqua Tail, so I brought in Gliscor, and we're going to have to take 2 Aqua Tails. I'm going to go ahead and no-shield those 2. Now, I make another really stupid mistake here. Instead of throwing after 3 wing attacks, I CMP tie him on the Aqua Tail, and of course he wins CMP, and he ends up taking my final shield because of a really dumb mistake that I made. Now he's going to bring back in Poliwrath, and I'm going to go for this Earthquake, which takes out most of his health. And I can bring in Virizion, and I'm going to no shield because I am expecting what he has in the back to be Skuntank because I've seen this team a lot. So I'm going to go ahead and not shield anything from this Poliwrath, and then I'm going to immediately swap into Charizard. It turns out it is going to be a Alolan Muck. Now, expecting my opponent to throw an Acid Spray and debuff me, and he still has 2 shields left, and I need to get those 2 shields out of the way. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and bait with 2 Dragon Claws, and then if I grab both his shields, I should be able to reach a Blast Burn. So we take his final shield, I reach the Blast Burn, I'm going to throw it, it's not going to be enough to KO, I'm going to immediately swap into Virizion, and I'm going to go ahead and shield this because I'm almost at a Leaf Blade. I reach the Leaf Blade, and we take out that Poliwrath. Even though I played that like absolute garbage, I was still able to save myself in the end. GG's to my opponent. Moving on to the next match, we see a really terrible lead. I'm going to go ahead and swap Gliscor into this, even though Gliscor is still really weak to it. The plan here is to bait with Night Slash and hopefully take his shields. I'm unfortunately going to have to shield these Weather Balls as well because they're going to be doing double super effective to our Gliscor. Gonna go ahead and throw the Earthquake on the second move. I should have probably baited with another Night Slash because then this thing would be out of the way. I still have a shield left, but, you know, this is not going too well. And I'm going to go ahead and tell you guys that it's not going to go well at all once you guys see what's in the back. My opponent goes ahead and brings in Giratina, and I realize here that this might be ABA Fairy. And in the back, it is going to be Sylveon, which is why I tried to save that Charizard. But it's not going to work out for us because all my shields are down, and I think this Sylveon is going to attempt to farm me down completely, but this Leaf Blade is going to be enough to take it out. Unfortunately, Giratina is still very healthy, and they're going to be able to reach 2 moves, and so I'm not going to be able to take that win. I top left, and GG's to my opponent. We take a loss there, but that's okay because we got 4 wins in that set. Moving on to the next set. We get another really nice lead of Jellicent into our Virizion, and because I'm running Leaf Blade, this is going to be a very favorable matchup to me. I'm going to go ahead and throw these Leaf Blades, and I don't have to shield the first Shadow Ball. I will have to shield the second one. I'm going to go ahead and no-shield this, and I should be able to outpace to the next Leaf Blade. It should come really close to taking him out. I think I am going to have to go ahead and throw a third Leaf Blade, unfortunately, not leaving this matchup with a bunch of energy. Now my opponent brings in Skuntank, and I don't want him to farm me down because that is a ton of energy for him. So I immediately swap into Gliscor, and because our fast moves, it looked like were desynced, I wanted them to be synced again because I don't want him to be ahead by a move. So I went ahead and threw that Night Slash. Now my opponent brings in Cobalion into Gliscor, which is a very interesting choice. I'm gonna go ahead and go for that Earthquake. I probably should have baited. I took his first shield, and my opponent goes for that Stone Edge. Now I'm going to bring in Virizion because my Virizion is actually going to be useless versus the Skuntank, and I'm going to save 2 shields for Charizard and bring Charizard into Skuntank, and we should be able to take it out. My opponent goes ahead and uses the second shield, which puts me in a very good position to double shield my Charizard. I am going to go ahead and throw the Blast Burn before my opponent can reach another Crunch. This should take him out, and then I can easily reach another Blast Burn on Cobalion and take out the Cobalion, and we take that win. GG's to my opponent. Oh, I just remembered, I forgot to hit record on one of the matches in the set. It was a win, and they had a Steelix in the back, and I know this video is all about targeting Steelix, so unfortunately I don't have that match to show you guys, but it's okay. Moving on to the next match. On the lead, we see a Cresselia. It's not looking good for us at all. I immediately swap into Gliscor, and I am going to take this Hydro Cannon from Swampert. I want to build up to the Earthquake because I can take their shield, and if they don't shield, I can take them out and win switch. So going for the Earthquake, of course, it's going to get their shield. They have to go for another Hydro Cannon because they're not going to be able to one-shot us down. So they take us out, and then I can bring in Virizion, and I'm going to try to build up as much energy as I can. I think I was considering farming them down completely here, but I was like, nah, I'm just gonna go for this Leaf Blade. I also didn't want to risk them swapping out because Charizard can potentially sweep whatever is in the back, and it's looking like we might be able to sweep with Charizard. My opponent brings in Registeel, and I'm going to go ahead and double shield. Not gonna take any Zap Cannons on Charizard. As long as I keep the Charizard healthy, I should be good for the Cresselia matchup. Gonna go for a second Blast Burn, and I am expecting this to take his second shield. It does, and I outpace to the next Blast Burn before my opponent can get to another Zap Cannon. I'm gonna farm up as much energy as I can before throwing the next Blast Burn because all of that energy is going to be very useful for the Cresselia matchup. We managed to take out the Registeel, and now it's just Zard versus Cress. As long as Cresselia does not have Feature Sight, all of their moves should be resisted, and I should be able to reach 2 Blast Burns. 2 Blast Burns, however, is not going to be enough to KO Cress because Cress is so tanky. So gonna go ahead and throw the second Blast Burn, and my opponent survives with a little bit of HP. I should be able to reach a Leaf Blade on Virizion, however, and take out my opponent. GG's to my opponent. Oh, I went for the Sacred Sword just to, you know, for giggles. Just for fun. You can do that sometimes. You can have fun in this game. But that fun didn't last for long because Pidgeot is here to rain on our parade. Of course, I'm going to swap immediately into Gliscor, and I'm going to go for these Night Slashes. This matchup is a little bit tricky. I think my opponent is going to go for Brave Bird here, but I go ahead and no-shield it anyways because if I can save shields for Virizion, at least I'm going to be doing some damage to the Pidgeot because it's going to be taking neutral from the Sacred Swords. Of course, I go ahead and mess up and throw a Night Slash on Tapu Fini, and my opponent catches it perfectly. If I was just a little bit more patient, I could have thrown Earthquake on it. Now my opponent is going to go ahead and throw Moonblast on Virizion. I am going to shield, and unfortunately, I'm going to be shields down for the Pidgeot matchup, and that's not good. Gonna farm up a little bit extra before throwing the Leaf Blade and taking them out. Now I'm going to go for Sacred Sword, and my opponent goes ahead and shields this. Like I said, it's going to be neutral. Even though Pidgeot is flying type, it is part normal, and it's going to be taking neutral from fighting type moves. I go ahead and I throw another Sacred Sword, and I'm going to go ahead and shield just in case my opponent has something in the back that is weak to Virizion. They don't. We get so lucky here. My opponent has Virizion in the back. I actually did not need the Virizion. I was able to do as much damage as possible to the Pidgeot and swap out a Virizion, bring in Zard. My opponent was not able to reach a move on Zard, and now it's going to be Virizion versus my Charizard. We're able to take that win. GG's to my opponent. We got really lucky there. Moving on to the final battle of the video, we see a Jellicent lead. You know how this is going to go. We're going to stay in and we're going to start spamming these Leaf Blades. Virizion needs 3 Leaf Blades to take out Jellicent. I'm going to go ahead and no-shield the first Shadow Ball. This is going to do a little over half our health. And going to reach another Leaf Blade, throw it, expecting a no-shield because my opponent can easily live that. Gonna go for the 3rd Leaf Blade, and it takes his shield. My opponent really wants to win Switch. I actually was not expecting my opponent to be running a full team weak to Virizion, but it turns out they are. I'm gonna bring in Gliscor and gonna go for this Earthquake. Let's see if my opponent decides to shield. They don't. I'm gonna go ahead and shield the Scald. Interesting that they didn't go for Ice Punch. Ice Punch is double super effective. And then I reach a Night Slash and I get the boost. Unfortunately, my opponent survives with 1 HP, so I am going to go ahead and shield, and my opponent has a Steelix in the back. I'm going to go ahead and bait with Night Slash, and then I'm going to go for the Earthquake. I don't know why my opponent didn't throw Breaking Swipe, but they probably knew it was already over. The Earthquake one-shots because it is boosted, and we take that win. We take 5 wins in that set. Unfortunately, I don't have one of the battles recorded, but that's okay. GG's to all my opponents there. Those matches were really fun. But that brings us to the end of this video. I hope you guys enjoyed that, and I hope you guys are having a lovely Go Battle weekend. If you guys like my videos, please consider subscribing and maybe leaving a like on my videos. It helps me out a ton. Let me know if you guys use the team and if it works out for you, and I will see you guys in the next video. Bye bye!